So as I mentioned, Alabama's going to be going to Chapel Hill to play in the Dean Dome on Wednesday, and this is a big game, right? This is not the last of Alabama's non-conference slate, big non-conference slate. They do have one more against Creighton coming up, but this is near the end of this gauntlet of a non-conference slate, and I think this is a game that, in my opinion, Alabama is as prepared to be able to be successful in as possible for a few reasons. First, I think that North Carolina plays a style that Alabama is very comfortable with. North Carolina plays fast, plays with their guards a lot, and unlike North Carolina last season, plays more through their guards than they play through their bigs, right? Last season, we saw them play through Armando Bacot, and it took a very big game out of Grant Nelson for Alabama to have some success. However, this season, North Carolina is much more in their guard play, is much more looking for R.J. Davis and Seth Trimble and Elliot Kudo to have bigger games. These are all guys that Alabama has played before. Alabama is going to have some size on most of these guys, depending upon who we play at the three. With the absence of Latrell Reitzel being able to start at the three, it would not shock me if Jaron Stevenson slots back into the three. It would also not shock me if Darion Reed slots back into the three. I'm thinking probably Jaron Stevenson, due to the fact that he's the Chapel Hill kid, is probably going to get the start in this one. I'm sure that's going to be talked about a lot in this game, that Jaron Stevenson's mother played for North Carolina and that he's from like 3 miles down the road in Chapel Hill. This is a game that Alabama, I think, has the kind of guys to be able to run with Carolina, right? Carolina does like to play fast. Alabama will be one of the only teams on their calendar that they play that plays faster than them. Currently, Alabama plays 5th in tempo. Kentucky is the only team that Alabama will play that plays faster than that. North Carolina is currently slotted at 7th in tempo. So, again, this is going to be a very, very fast game. I would expect 75-plus possessions. Auburn did play Carolina here in the Maui Invitational, and Auburn won that game by 13. Largely in that one, it was on the back of Johnny Broome. But I think that Alabama is going to have the ability to have some success with its guards. This is a game that's because it's going to be played so fast, I would expect that Aiden Holloway is very successful in this game. I think that the speed in which that he plays with is going to help him in this one. It's also a standpoint that because of the lack of size of some of North Carolina's guards, Aiden and Mark are not going to be as undersized as they typically are against a team like a Houston that has real big physical guards. Carolina is much more of a smaller finesse guard style team. So this is one that I think Alabama could have some success in. When we look at the KenPom page for Carolina, and again, it's still a little early for KenPom, but when you look at the things that they do well, they're really good at not turning the ball over. They're 4th in the country at not turning the ball over on offense. However, they do a fairly poor job at turning teams over on defense. So that is a good thing to see, that if Alabama is able to not have unforced turnovers themselves, Carolina does not do a good job forcing those turnovers on their defensive standpoint. That's a place I think that Alabama could have some success if Alabama was able to clean up the turnovers and play with pace. Again, that's why I would look to a guy like Aiden Holloway, who typically has a very good assist-to-turnover ratio. I think that he's going to be able to keep the pace up, but in control, right? I think he's done the best job of that so far this season. I think that this is a game in which I would expect him to have a really big game. Another thing about it is that I think Alabama could have some success is from an offensive rebounding perspective, North Carolina is not that great at it, right? So if Alabama can do a decent job crashing the defensive glass, I think that Alabama could win the glass battle And in a battle of tempo, if you can get the ball off the glass, you can push it in transition, right? Also, in a battle of a game that I'm sure is going to have quite a few 3-point attempts, this is a situation where I would be looking for Alabama to get the ball off the glass and try to run and gun. Whereas, as we know, an offensive rebound is the best chance at an open 3-pointer, right? Obviously, we saw some of the analytics games that Alabama was playing last season with letting Elliot Kudo shoot the ball. I don't think that we're going to see that as much this season. I think that Alabama is really going to guard them straight up from a standpoint of 3-point shooters. When we look at kind of the shooters this season, RJ Davis has not done a great job shooting the ball from deep. He's just 27% on the season. Seth Trimble is their best 3-point shooter currently at 52%. Ian Jackson, the incoming the new freshman, is 47. Drake Powell, 46. Jalen Withers, which we know is that played for them last season, the transfer from Louisville, 42%. Right, so they do have some decent guys shooting the ball from deep. RJ Davis, the fifth-year guy, or I guess, is he fifth or sixth? Yeah, the fifth-year guy is really one of the only ones that's not done a great job shooting the ball so far this season that has put up quite a few. But this is a game which Alabama and North Carolina are very familiar with each other, right? They have played a couple of times. Nate has played Hubert Davis, does know some of the tendency, does so. Again, we played these guys last season in the Elite Eight in the Sweet 16 in LA. I was at that game, and I do think this is a game that Alabama can have some success based on our matchup and personnel. The question mark in this one, and we talked about this one a little bit in the breakdown of the Oregon game, is because Latrell Wrightsell is going to be out. Who slides into the 3? I think that's probably going to be some combination of Jaron Stevenson and Darion Reed. And also, what amount does Chris Youngblood play in this game, if at all, right? I mentioned that Joe Goodman spoke to Nate Oates, and there's thought that he may play in this game. It's much more likely he plays in the Creighton game. My personal thought is that we see him a little bit in this Carolina game just to kind of get his feet wet, and then we see him much more in the Creighton game on a minutes restriction. I do not have any basis in that, but that's what my thoughts are. So that is really the question that I'm looking at is, who slots in for Latrell Wrightsell due to his injury, and, what do we see as the lineup starts to shake out as more of our knockdown shooter to replace that Latrell Wrightsell role, and then also what happens from a Chris Youngblood standpoint. Again, I do expect that this is an Aiden Holloway game. It would not shock me if Jaron Stevenson plays much better in Chapel Hill than he did in the Sweet 16 game against Carolina last season. I think that him getting his confidence back at the end of Vegas is going to be very helpful for him, but I am curious what happens in this one. I am going to predict that Alabama wins this game. I think part of this has to do with the fact that Alabama has been able to win close games outside of that Oregon game. I thought Alabama probably was going to win that Oregon game. They went on a little bit of a downturn when Latrell went out. I think it kind of just caught some guys by surprise. Whereas Carolina has lost their 3 games that they played against, better competition outside of Dayton. They lost against Kansas, Auburn, and Michigan State. And I think that Alabama is going to be able to do similar to what some of those other teams were able to do. I would not expect Mark Sears and Aiden Holloway to shoot as poorly as they did against Oregon. And I think that the lack of size of Carolina and their inability to turn people over, and I'm sure that that's going to be the number one thing Nate is harping on after the issues in Vegas. I think that Alabama is going to be able to have some success in this game, not turn the ball over, and get a big win in the Dean Dome, right? So my prediction is probably, as I mentioned, probably 75-plus possessions. I would think this game is probably in the 91-85 range. I am going to predict Alabama to win this game and get back on track before hosting Creighton in a week and a half in Coleman. So that is my prediction of this game. If you are curious, and the write-ups for this one, I will have full write-ups and full threads coming out the morning of this game. So follow me over on Twitter if you do not already. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.